Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Marla Mervis-Hartmann is a dynamic speaker, best-selling author, and coach specializing in body confidence, food freedom, and self-love. As the creator of Love Your Body, Love Yourself, and the best-selling book Befriend Yourself, Marla empowers individuals to transform their relationships with food and their bodies through self-compassion and spiritual practices. Featured on TEDx Salinas and in major media outlets like ABC, NBC, and Fox, she integrates expertise in Reiki, integrative somatic trauma therapy, and women's wellness to help people move from despair to hope and thrive in their lives. Marla resides in Maui with her family, continuing her mission to inspire others to embrace self-acceptance and vibrant living. Aloha, Marla. Aloha. I was just sharing with you that I was in Maui and it was so beautiful. We stayed in Kanapali
Oh,
and
it's so beautiful up there.
I love it. And I'm just excited to talk with you. And yes, I was just before we hit record, we were just saying, oh, we better hit record because we're sharing some good stuff here about self-compassion and loving
Exactly.
ourselves and all this good stuff. But you believe that everyone is entitled to body confidence and freedom with food. Can you just go ahead and share how this belief became the cornerstone of your work?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think that they can look at someone and they know if that person is has confidence in their body, or oh, they must not because they're a certain weight, or they must because they're super thin. And body confidence, and I'll say that differently, even body neutrality. You were talking right before we hit record, where it's just like, I don't really care what my weight is. That's body neutrality. That's like being confident within ourselves that the body takes a back seat, right? And that the body isn't like where we get our confidence. However, myself being someone who was, born into a healthy, thinner body, you would have looked at me and been like, she doesn't have any issues. But I did. I had so much dysfunction around what my body looked like and perfectionism, so much binging and restricting and over exercising, and so much control that showed up in my relationship with my body and my food. So, this is kind of an epidemic that happens that it's not prejudice against what the body type is. And so, it doesn't matter what body shape you're in right now, you are allowed to care and love your body.
Yes, I would share this story. Let me share it with you. So, when I was in elementary school, I was doing some hardcore workouts. My sister, she's 6 feet tall. She's 10 years older and she was modeling. And for me, I mean, we have different fathers, and I took after my dad's side. He's more built differently, like more broad, muscular. So I have more muscle tone and definitely not 6 feet tall. I'm 5'5". So she would work out and do these Cindy Crawford workout videos. And then when no one was looking, I was doing them too, but like obsessive. Like I was just like, gotta get small, gotta get small. My mom would give me lunch money for school. I would just pocket it. I wouldn't eat because I looked at everybody else and I compared myself to everybody else. I started my period 3 days shy of my ninth birthday. So I started developing breasts at an early age. I was actually the tallest one in my class for girls and boys, I think too. And so I felt very low self-esteem, low self-confidence. And so I would do anything to try to lose weight. And that continued until like high school. And then even in my partying days, I was always comparing myself. And it got to a point where I'm like, heck, I don't love myself. And I would numb myself with alcohol. That's what I did. I mean, I was very low confidence and it was very hard. And that's why I'm so glad that we have coaches like you, authors like you, speakers like you who can speak about this topic because I think it's important for the younger generation to realize, hey, start loving yourself now and you won't have to go through these hard challenges in the future.
Yeah, and I love that you share this, because if we break that down, right? If we break down like where that started for you, because people want to blame it on their body. And yet what I heard, and maybe you can tell me even more, is that your relationship with your body and your relationship with food came from a place of being uncomfortable, being like, oh my gosh, I all of a sudden am developing and I'm taller than everyone. And as a young girl, sometimes we don't have that feedback. I mean, our parents love us and they're doing their best, but we don't even know what we need. We don't even know that we need someone to be like, oh my gosh, this must be really uncomfortable for you. And it's like, I just like puberty is so like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And that's where a lot of this kind of starts happening because we want to control something. The body feels out of control and we want to control it. I also see that in like perimenopause, menopause, that transition for women as well. And so what I heard is like the discomfort and then the control, and then that leads to more, and then that leads to more self-loathing, and now you have an addiction with food, and now here comes alcohol to save the day, right?
Yes. So my senior year, I will never forget this. So my boyfriend at the time, very loving, he would always take me out to eat. So we would eat, 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 eat. And then I was gaining weight, but I was very unaware. And my mom and her friend were talking to each other in the living room. He's a male. And he brought me over. He's like, "Hey, Gina, come here." And he sat me down. Like he was really serious. I was maybe 17 years old at the time, or maybe even 18. And he said, "I noticed you're gaining a lot of weight. What's going on?" And I'm like, and I had no clue. I mean, I felt like my boyfriend loved me for me, wasn't ever saying, "Oh, you're getting bigger" or anything, but he really thought I was gaining weight. And I was like, "Oh," and that devastated me and that killed me inside. And so my mom, she put me on the Jenny Craig program, which check this out. I found it beneficial and I loved it. And I did lose weight, of course. So much that when I turned 20, 21, I got hired as a weight loss consultant to work for them. And I worked for them almost 5 to 7 years or something like that. But I would see the same pattern. I would see the clients come in, do the program, try to get them on the maintenance program. I was also in sales there. And they would lose weight, leave, come back because they've gained it all. So it was like a yo-yo, yo-yo, yo-yo. So I know that we talk about like emotional eating in the program, and I know it's a common challenge for many. What steps can someone go ahead and take to break free from the cycle of emotional eating and move towards a healthier relationship with food?
So I want to answer that. And I just want to comment on dieting, right? Because what you just shared is so typical. So many people are dieting and then they blame themselves that it didn't work. When that experience that you're sharing is the common theme with dieting. You go on a restriction, you gear up a whole bunch of willpower, and then after a while, we can't hold that. And so a lot of people come to me because they're like, I don't want to diet, but I don't want to go back to the way I was eating because there was actually some things that are unhealthy here. The way I am with food, the emotional eating, the things I'm eating, and they don't know, or they do know, but they don't know how to access this third road, right? The one of truth, the one of compassion, the one of health, and that is something that is can be uncharted territory for people. And that's where I come in. And so, for a lot of people, to answer your question about emotional eating is a really big umbrella. And under emotional eating, we have binge eating, we have boredom eating, we have restriction, we have dieting. There's a lot of emotional dieting, right? So we have all these things that we do either to stuff our feelings or to control by restriction. So when we think about any time that we're uncomfortable, and now we start to control that discomfort or some big emotions with food, putting it in, taking it out, exercise, whatever your jam is, right? And so I actually have a free course. It's called Breaking the Cycle of Emotional Eating. And I'll give you the link if I haven't already, Gina. It's a free course, but it really dives into, and I really give a lot of information about what you can do to overcome emotional eating. Because I find that people are okay with emotional eating until they start gaining weight. And then now they're like, oh, now it's not working anymore. And this is the thing, food is comfort. Food grounds us. Food is entertainment. Food is joy. Food is pleasure. And we're not taking that away from it. Food does help us with our emotions. The issue is when the food becomes the way that we deal with life, the way that we do it. Same with alcohol, right? Alcohol becomes the answer. And sooner or later, the answer of the food isn't working anymore. And the choice of the emotional eating or dieting or whatever is creating more pain than it is taking it away. So, what I see with people, myself included, is like there's this emotional eating. And then on top of the pain that I was eating over, now I'm dealing with so much shame and so much guilt and so much belly pain or so much whatever is going on in my body that it doesn't work anymore. And so that's the good news, right? The good news, oh my gosh, this doesn't work anymore. Now the next news is, so what do we do? So we really have we what we need to do is we need to look at the reason why. Now, in the work that I do, that can look like finding some really practical reasons, right? Some people aren't feeding themselves enough. Some people are dealing with a lot of stress. They're not caring for themselves. They're running on empty. And so there's some practical self-care tools. Now, there's also for a lot of people who deal with food issues, disordered eating or eating disorders or whatever, there's often a deep hook that is coming from a wound from a younger part of our lives. That somehow food got hooked into that as the way to be okay with life. I know some people say, I didn't have like this huge trauma in my life. I didn't either, but yet we all have wounding. We all have these parts in our life where we're not met in the way that we need to be met because we're dealing with parents who are human. Right now sometimes we do, like I'll have to tell you, Gina, I have a lot of clients who have dealt with abuse, sexual abuse, violation, like pain, a lot of emotional abuse, that food got into that place. And now we have to unpack that in the most loving way. It isn't about going in and pressing on it. And, you know, I know I'm answering this in a really long way, but I'm just going to keep going because when I have people come to me, they're often like, I've already dealt with that. I've already dealt with that trauma. I've already gone to so much talk therapy. I've already done all this stuff. And you're telling me I have to go into it anymore? I'm like, no, I'm not. What I'm saying is that we need to look at how this wounding is connected to the food. And that really is my expertise because we can talk here, but we have to find the connection and how we can unwind the food. And so that's an art all in itself. And I think you probably understand that because being someone who works with alcohol and addiction, you understand that there is that connection that needs to be attended to in the same moment, not as over here or over here. Let's go diet over here, and let's go talk about trauma over here. There needs to be this intersection. And in that intersection is self-compassion, love, care, and this deep meeting of self in a way that can be so empowering and so loving.
Oh, thank you so much for explaining that. And it's true because, say, for example, I got off alcohol, then I went towards food, or I'm over exercising because I'm trying to distract and get my mind off what really is the root cause of what's causing me to do these actions. Yeah. And this is where
Exactly.
your book comes in then, right?
Yes.
Befriend yourself. And the full title is Befriend Yourself Finding Freedom with Food and Peace with Your Body. That is a great title. I wish I had that book. Oh, when did it come out?
It came out October 1st,
Oh, October 1st.
2024.
Oh, nice. Oh, so just recently. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna
Yes.
get your book. Yeah. So, you talk about befriending yourself, and that is something I had to learn. And that's why I love coaches so much because when I became sober in 2017, I didn't really see any alcohol-free sobriety coaches or recovery coaches. I actually had to find a fitness coach and a mindset coach, and luckily she did both. And she helped me with my limiting beliefs and how to start giving myself that compassion, loving myself, reframing my thoughts, because we have that inner critic voice, we have that inner child voice, we have that intuition voice, and we have our ego voice all talking to us and communicating with us all at the same time. I want to ask you, what does it mean to befriend yourself, and how can listeners go ahead and start to begin this process?
So when I was writing my book and I was going back into my story and I'm like, what is the theme here? What did I actually do to heal? And I realized I became my own best friend. The whole process that I was unlearning and learning is friend myself. Be be be, if you'll look at the book, it's capital BE because it's being with self. Now, I grew up with two sisters and a mom they're my best friends as of this day. I have so many really, um, I just have so many friends in my life. And I was not that friend to myself. So often we take this idea of like self love, right? It's such a big concept, but what does that actually mean? And actually, how can we do that? And how can we use this concept of self love in a way that actually heals our relationship with our body and our food? And so, if we think about what a good friend is someone who listens, who shows up, who prioritizes us, who is kind to us, who encourages us, who is right there. Now, think about doing that for yourself. Think about doing that in the context of food. Oh, I'm going to prioritize and I'm going to eat healthy food. Or I'm going to listen to my body that says, you know what? Eating chocolate like 9 o'clock at night probably isn't the best thing that I could do for myself, the most loving action. So it's that opportunity, it's that mantra that we can use in our head that says, what would my best friend do right now? So here I am with a lot of shame. What would my best friend say to me? And then now I can say that to myself. And in these moments of celebrating self, right? So lots of times we can really put ourselves down, and our friends, they don't have that. My best friend does not have that. No, 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 no. You're not doing that here. That is what you're saying is not true. It's not truth. It's not who you are. And that's what we can begin to do for ourselves. We want to strengthen that friend voice inside of us that goes along with all those other voices. And so the book is really about using the concept of befriending ourselves and how that can heal our relationship with our body and our food, and how I did it and how I help my clients do that. And it's a good book, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners go ahead and get your book?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it in Barnes and Nobles. You can find it in so many different, if you just Google it. Go to my website though. If you go there, you'll see that you can order the book and come back and put your order number in, and then I give you my Body Compassion Collective course for free.
That is
So
amazing. Yes, the companions, right? The companions. Now let's talk about Reiki and spirituality. I'm a massage therapist. I've been a massage therapist for 17 years, and everyone always tells me, Gina, you have healing hands. Even my animals sense it. My kids definitely sense it. And I just want to put out love, that love energy, that love vibration, that love frequency, because that's all we're here to do is to love. And we forgot that. And it starts with ourselves. Um, Reiki and spirituality play, like I said, a significant role in your approach to healing relationships with food and the body. Now, Can you go ahead and explain these practices and help how listeners go ahead and start integrating them into their own personal lives?
Yeah. So let's talk about what Reiki is.
Yes.
So, Reiki is a spiritual practice and a hands on healing modality. And so, what Reiki does and what Reiki is, it's the energy of unconditional love. It is it's pure love. It's tapping into that. So at the end of the day, all that is that we're looking for is love. If you go in more and more and more, it's like, oh, I need love. And so that's what we're accessing when we're accessing this energy. So it's an energy healing modality. And what it does is people will say to me, well, can you feel my dark energy? Can you get rid of my blocks? I'm like, no, 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 that's not how it works. Reiki goes in and releases stress in your body physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so that your true essence comes out. So it's like the truth of who you are begins to overcome these what me people may say darkness or blocks or whatever. And so why is this important? And how well, okay, Marla, what is that? How does that look? What does that look like? So when I first found Reiki, I was early on in my healing with my food. And Reiki was the perfect companion for me because I was so stressed out and I didn't have any coping mechanisms other than food. So I could put my hands on myself because you can give Reiki to yourself. I could actually calm myself down with Reiki. No, Reiki is not only just a healing modality, it's a spiritual practice. And when you're in love, when you're in the energy of love, you get to see where you're not in the energy of love. And I got to notice, whoa, I am so mean to myself. I'm saying such mean things to myself, and I'm judging myself, and I'm putting myself down, and I'm pushing myself. And I got to see that contrast, and I got to feel like, oh, when I'm over here doing all this and I'm calling in love and Reiki, wow, like I'm lit up and I feel really good. And so it was a wonderful practice for me. And so when I started doing it in 2000, I've been doing it for, I guess, 25 years now.
Wow.
I can't even believe that I'm still doing it. I'm teaching it, I'm sharing it. It's part of everything that I do. And along with that has come more of a blossoming in my own spiritual practice. I've always been someone, I grew up in the church, and I've had a deep relationship with what I call God, a higher power. And so the leaning on, when we think about healing from any sort of addiction, it can you feel helpless. You feel like, I have no idea how to do this. I do not know what I'm doing. I am done. And in that moment, it can feel like a dark night of a soul. But I tell you what, if you lean into that and surrender and you call upon a higher power, whatever that means to you, and you say, I need help, I need support, that shows up in such a loving way. So for me, that's a big part of my life. I'm always in a deep connection with God and my prayer and my practices to connect with the divine, connect with nature, connect with myself. And there's so much love in that, right? And that begins to overcome these parts of addiction and actually get us on track. So in everything that I do and I share, there's an element of that. Now, a lot of people come to me and they don't, they don't have that practice, and maybe they don't even want that practice. And yet they still are wanting me as that beacon of light for them to guide them. And I mean, I don't know where I'd be without that, without that connection.
I hear you, and it kind of gets me emotional too because it reminded me of when I had to surrender as well. I share this on my podcast all the time, and you may have even heard it. I'm not sure, but I was in my car in such despair. And it was rainy day, and I was at a liquor store, and I was in the parking lot, and I was crying, 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 crying. And I was like, you know what? I give up. God, I cannot do this alone. And I was crying, crying because I've had relapse after relapse, relapse. And I said, I need your help. I need you. I can't. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And the 2 weeks later, I kid you not, I wound up in the hospital. with pancreatitis. And at first I was like, oh my goodness, what is God mad at me? No, it was a blessing in disguise. It really, I sat with myself and my higher power, and I had that connection. I was able to then reflect on everything in my past and say, okay, this is not your fault. Let's go move forward. You're here now, and what better place to detox than in a hospital? And I got better. I was there for a week, and then I remember going home. And this is where I had no kid. My kids were taken away, everything. My life was in shambles. It was bad. So I had moved into a studio. So I went back to my studio. There was a bottle of vodka there waiting for me, and I just threw it away. I said, I'm done. And I changed my whole life. Started going to church and started going to community with women who are wanting to know more about God. And I was going to Bible study. I was doing all these things that I felt like I needed to be doing at that time. And then that's what led me then to eventually meet my husband later on. And what a blessing it is just to surrender and have that connection with the divine. Whatever God of your understanding, and mine is Jesus. I keep it real. And
You?
that's my mentor. That's my spiritual partner. And then we have a connection, and I definitely would say I'm more spiritual than religious. And because I'm open to everything, I'm open to the galactic. I'm like so open to, I have such an open mind. I don't close anything because it all is what it comes down to is love, like you said. So thanks for sharing that. And that's touched my heart.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And what I hear in that is sometimes we look at our lives and we think that, you know, the God that life is against us. And yet sometimes our darkest moments were the moments where the light shot through
Mhm.
because it was everything was taken away. And yet sometimes that needs to happen in order for us to find alignment. If we get out of alignment, it's like it's not going to be just like whoop. Sometimes it's like we need to be smacked back in.
Oh, yes, yes. We have to go through the darkness in order for us to see the light. And sometimes it's hard. All of us have a unique story. We all have our own personal journey. And for us to even get out of it and then see the light, what a miracle. That's such a blessing from God. And just to be there as our guidance. Like I have a spiritual team. I always say I have help with anything that is, I struggle all the time. I'm not gonna lie. I struggle every day. Living here on earth is hard. Earth is hard.
It really is. And I think that, being a warrior and also I, I was reading, I don't something on Facebook, and it was talking about holding grief in one hand and gratitude in the other. And that's what really life is. It's like, here's the sadness, or here's what we're going through and the challenges. And then over here is like, oh my gosh, like, wow, am I blessed? And wow, is there so much gratitude and so much goodness going on. And life really is about balancing that and holding each of those in either hand. And I think it makes so much sense because within 5 minutes I can be in gratitude and then in tears, right? And they're both valid.
Yes. Oh. It's interesting because, before I was taught as a little child, don't cry, don't feel that way, don't do that, don't do that. And it's like I tell my children when they're crying, I said, let it out. Even
Yeah.
this morning, my husband had a meltdown because I mean, our kitchen was flooding. There was a leak underneath the sink in the kitchen, and it caused water damage underneath our kitchen. And so we're having workers come, and he has his parents coming in, and some other things with his work, and he exploded. Not at me, but just like, I'm so stressed. Like he does not normally like that. And I was like, and he apologized later. He's like, I'm so sorry I had that outburst. I said, no, don't apologize. It needed to come out. It's better for it to come out than hold it in. And I tell this to my children too, like, share your feelings. If you need to cry, cry. There's no shame in crying. It's a good release. Like I cry even when I'm like happy. I'm like, oh, thank you. I just let it out. I don't hold anything back anymore. So it's important to be in touch with our body, like check in with ourselves. Hey, how are you feeling today, Gina? Like, what do you need today? Do you
Exactly.
need yourself? Do you need to give yourself a hug? do you need to just, I don't know, do something that you love doing? Walk outside?
Yeah, you brought up a couple different things that I'd love to just share because I think that slowing down and being with ourselves, a lot of people, I've had people say to me, first off, to just talk about crying. They're like, I want to be strong. I want to be strong. I'm crying. I want to, no, no, no. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Tears and crying is the strength. It's not that you're not strong because you're crying. You are strong. Wait, it's you are strong because you're crying, because you're meeting yourself and you're allowing that to happen. And so it's important to allow our emotions. If we don't allow our emotions and we're afraid of our emotions, that's what creates the buildup. So I was just talking with a client yesterday, and we were talking about how how when they are dealing with their life and the emotions start to build, and then all of a sudden it comes to the end of the day, and now it's like, oh my gosh, I have to binge. And like, okay, so I want you to look back at when that first started and when you were having feelings, or, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a little bit stressed out right now. Wow, I'm feeling a little bit rushed. Oh, wow, that comment that I got from my coworker. Whoa, that like, oh, that hit me really a little bit tricky here, you know? And if we begin to notice these smaller moments and we lean into them and we care for them, they don't need to build up. Like your husband, I'm not, no judgment on it, but I'm just saying, if we take that for example, maybe if he would have let himself like lean into that, he wouldn't have had to have that outburst. I'm not saying the outburst is wrong. I'm just using that as an example, as
Right.
the outburst being something like, now we're going towards an addiction. Now all of a sudden it's too much. And now I have my head like in a gallon of ice cream because it's too many emotions and I don't even know what's going on. So the tuning in and allowing yourself to feel. I mean, I'll have many times where I'm just like, I'm just stressed out. I just need to cry. There's no story. There's nothing wrong. It's just a lot of energy. And like we said, life can be hard. Being on this planet is hard. And sometimes we just need to have that outlet. Mine is crying. Someone else's maybe like going for a run and letting it lead that way. Sometimes people need to like meditate and go under it. Sometimes people need to rest, know thyself, just like you would your own best friend. You know your best friend, you want to know yourself.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. I talk to myself all the time, but I used to say all these bad things about myself, and I check myself when something bad is coming up, like, oh, I don't look that good this today. Ah! No, Gina, you look beautiful today. Whatever my mind says, I've been playing this game with myself. I say the opposite. When it's
Right.
derogatory, I'm like, I'm going to say the opposite instead. I said, no, I don't need to entertain those negative thoughts in my mind. No way. So I've been
Yeah. Good
developing a better
awareness.
relation. Yeah, I
Great
check
awareness.
myself because before I just be like beating myself up, and I'm like, Gina, would you ever talk to a child or to a stranger that way? Or like you said, your best friend? Absolutely not. So what makes you think that's acceptable to talk to yourself like that? It's not.
Bingo. Awesome, Gina. Couldn't have said it any better myself.
Oh, well, I love our conversation. Last question I have. What does living a thriving life mean to you, and how can listeners align with this vision in their lives?
So thriving to me really means being who we are. I feel like it also depends on what season of life you're in, right? And so thriving to someone who's a teenager, thriving to someone who is a parent to younger kids, or someone who's in an elder. There are these different seasons in our life where thriving really means something different. However, at the end of the day, thriving is about letting go of our coping mechanisms so that we can be who we are, who we can really allow ourselves to be our authentic self, where we allow ourselves to show up in life, we allow ourselves to have pleasure, where we allow ourselves to be on purpose. And for me right now, thriving for me means doing some deep work around my health and gaining energy and noticing where I am blocking energy or holding too much. Thriving for me, it means speaking up. And thriving for me is being right here, right now with you and allowing my message to be heard because I know that that is on purpose for me. That is my purpose. And also showing up for my family with a lot of love. So it's a good question, right? It's a good question to ask yourself. What does thriving mean to me? And sometimes from one day to another, it can look like, you know what thriving means to me? It means going in my bed and putting the covers up and like just tuning out. That made me thriving. And that is awesome because you're listening. You're listening to yourself.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, any other last words or thoughts you would like to share at all before we close?
Yes, I would just like to emphasize what Gina said. Stop being mean to yourself and talking negative, really becoming aware of that and following that and noticing why you're saying those mean things to yourself. And are you trying to protect yourself? Is this something that's just become a habit? And, we can't always just cancel out these negative things that we're saying, but we can give them space and we can begin to change that conversation in our head to something more compassionate. And the question would be is, how would my own best friend speak to me? And so I invite you to lean into that idea. And come over to my website, loveyourbodyloveyourself.com. You're going to find my book there. You're going to find my book club. You're going to find free gifts and all good things. So,
Yes, and check out her TEDx,
oh, yes.
Salinas. I loved it so much. You definitely go into your story further and those letters that you wrote. I was like, wow, I felt like that was me too. So
Oh,
check that out, audience. It's incredible, and definitely everything will be in the show notes, all the links. And thank you so much, Marla, for being on my show today. I truly enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for what you're doing and just spreading the love to this world that really needs a lot of love.
thank you so much for having me, Gina. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.